Today in the studio, I'm joined by Charles Mahtesian, national politics editor of Politico, and he's making a repeat appearance on the program to talk about the election. A couple of days away, Charlie. Thank you for coming in.
Great to be here.
All right, last time we talked about the House and the Senate in some detail and didn't talk about the White House at all. This time we're going to blow by the House of Representatives, which both you and I agree is going to be retained by the Republicans. Let's talk about the Senate and then talk about the White House. Let's go in the Senate right now. We're going to go right to the map. I'm just going to talk to you about each of these states and you tell me how they're going to land. Pennsylvania.
Late closing state, but still will remain in Democratic hands.
Ohio.
I think right now it looks good for Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown.
Okay, and I'm going to tell you when I disagree with you,
okay.
By the way. Maine.
I think that is going to be a net loss for Republicans because it looks like independent former Governor Angus King is going to win there.
You're right. Connecticut.
That's a tough one. A lot closer than anyone expected. I think at the presidential level it'll be pretty close, or at least closer, closer than 08. I do think in the end, though, probably Congressman Chris Murphy holds that seat for the Democrats. Yep.
Despite Linda McMahon spending a bunch of money. Okay, we're there right next door, so I'll ask it. Massachusetts.
Well, I should warn you, I'm a contrarian on this one. I think most of the money right now is on Elizabeth Warren. It's a presidential year in a very liberal state. It's going to be a very stiff win for Scott Brown to battle back against. I still think, though, he's just an outstanding retail candidate who's done nearly everything right. And I think if anyone can win against all the forces that are aligned against him, I think it'll be Scott Brown. So that's one of my big upset picks.
Okay. Let's go put some more Republicans on the board here. Nevada.
I think that's a Republican hold.
Arizona.
That's a tough one. I think that one's up in the air. If I had to say today, I would probably weigh in for Republican Congressman Jeff Flake holding that seat.
Yep. North Dakota.
A valiant effort by Democrat Heidi Heitkamp, but I think the drag at the top of the ticket is going to be so strong, and Obama's going to do so poorly there that I think ultimately that's a Republican pickup.
Missouri.
Claire McCaskill, the Democrat, holds her seat.
Wisconsin.
That's a tough one. I think that former Governor Tommy Thompson squeezes out a win there.
Okay. That one clearly is very, very close. Indiana. Big surprise that this race has turned out to be that close. Huh?
Yeah, go figure. Who would have thought that this late in the campaign we'd be talking about Indiana being in play? I would say that would be my other upset pick. I think at this point, Joe Donnelly, the Democratic congressman, is poised to pick up that seat over Richard Murdoch, who, as you know, knocked off Republican Richard Lugar in the primary.
Right. All right. So I'm sorry, you went. I lost you for a second there. How'd you land on that one?
In Indiana, that's an upset. I think that's a Democratic pickup.
Thank you. Okay, Virginia. By the way, that puts us right at 50 right now for the Democrats. Virginia.
I think that's Tim Kaine holds that seat for the Democrats.
And puts them back, keeps them in the majority. Montana?
I think that John Tester, the Democrat, holds his seat very, very narrowly, but a lot of it's contingent on how Barack Obama performs in Montana. A huge blowout, I think maybe Rehberg squeezes out, but if I had to weigh in one way or another, I say Senator Tester, the Democrat, holds his seat.
Okay, and under that scenario, Democrats have 52 votes, 48 for the Republicans. The only thing that's different between what you've said today here on this program and what your reporter at Politico wrote today in a pretty interesting piece is he had Massachusetts going Democrat, which had just changed on the board, putting it 53-47, which is what the current ratio is.
Right. As his editor, I'm always right. I just want to get that caveat in there. No, but Dave feels very strongly about that race. He's done a lot of reporting on it. I just think in the end, when you take a look at Massachusetts history, they're not, for a liberal state, it's not very good at electing women to statewide office. And because of the strength of the Brown campaign against a very strong Elizabeth Warren campaign, that's where Dave and I differ. I tend to think that Brown holds on to that seat.
Okay. So both of us, both you and your reporter, think that the Senate remains in Democratic control, and that I would say is what conventional wisdom in Washington is at the moment. House is Republican control, Senate remains in Democratic control. White House, let's flip to that, and while I'm doing the maps here, talk a little bit about the race for the White House.
Right, it's pretty amazing that after spending at least $6 billion, maybe as much as $10 billion when it's all done, it's all said and done, we might have a status quo election. It's pretty amazing to think about. At the White House, I mean, obviously the race is down to the 8 core battleground states. I mean, you could sort of quibble over the ones at the margins or the 9 core battleground states. You could argue about Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Michigan. I don't buy Minnesota at all. I just don't see it there. Pennsylvania and Michigan, if you're going to talk about expanding the map as the Romney campaign is talking about now, to me it's a stretch. Those are both states that haven't voted Republican at the presidential level, as you know, since 1988. So that's a long shot. But I would say that those 2 states tend to work in tandem in presidential elections. There's a lot of fundamentals at the ground level, at the county level, that look very similar between the 2 states. There are some forces out there that would, I think, give some hope to Republicans. At the end of the day, though, I think it's more of I wouldn't say a desperate attempt, but a necessary attempt to try to expand the map because of the stubbornness of Ohio and the inability for Mitt Romney to sort of pull it away from the Obama orbit.
All right. That's a great overview, and now I'm going to make you stick to a couple of specifics on some of these states. And we're going to see what we come up with here. So let's do some of those things that you said. Well, the map already here has Minnesota, Michigan.
I think that stays Democratic.
Yeah. And Pennsylvania.
I also think that stays Democratic.
And you can see right there, let me scroll down just a little bit, that gives Obama a pretty comfortable electoral college margin at the moment. Romney, to win, needs to kind of run the board here, but one big impediment to that, as you talked about, is Ohio. Right. So now it's election night. You have to make the call. How's Ohio going?
I was hoping you would backload it and do that last. I think if I had to
make you draw the map the other way.
If I had to say one way or another, when you look at the volume of polling data out of Ohio, it's almost, you can't come to almost any other conclusion other than an Obama victory. A narrow one. I think it's probably closer than the polls show. I also think one thing that people aren't factoring in is the Ohio Republican Party is one of the strongest state parties for Republicans in the entire nation. So they'll have a pretty good ground game there. I think that there's a very good shot that Romney has of taking Ohio, better than most people think. But I still think at the end of the day, right now, it looks to me like Barack Obama wins that state.
Okay, well, based on what you've just said, I'm taking that off the board for the moment, and we'll come back to it at the end. Florida.
I think that's a Romney state.
Okay. Let's go to North Carolina.
I think of the battleground states, that looks best for Mitt Romney.
Right. Okay. So now you can see we are virtually tied in the Electoral College, but there's a couple of key tippers here in all of this. So let's if we're, just to make this interesting, let's try and figure out how Romney wins from here. Mm-hmm. Given the fact that most people think that President Obama has an Electoral College advantage, as we're drawn here with these last remaining 5 or 6 states, let's construct a Romney win. How does he do it from here?
I think, first of all, you take Nevada off the map because that's probably leaning as hard Obama as North Carolina is leaning toward Romney. So then all of a sudden you've got, outside the Ohio states, Virginia looks pretty good for Mitt Romney. It's a fairly even state right now. If he's going to pull out one of those toss-ups, that would be a likely one. I think in Romney's case, what he has to do if he's not going to win Ohio is he's got to take one of the double-digit electoral states, meaning Virginia and Wisconsin, something like that, a combination of those. If he loses Ohio, he's got to have Wisconsin and Virginia to be in the hunt.
So we're going to give him Wisconsin, and you can see right there he's ahead a little bit. Colorado, Romney's been ahead in recent polls. Do you think that that's likely to hold?
I think it's plausible. I think they're doing okay in early voting there. It's when you take a look at the Real Clear Politics polling average, I think it's within 1 percentage point. So I think there's a viable map that has Colorado in the Romney camp.
All right, Iowa.
It's a tough state. There's some thinking that there is, the Obama campaign has this Midwestern firewall designed to insulate the campaign, and if Wisconsin goes, Iowa will go the same way. You know, I tend to think that Iowa is, that's a state that's been highly competitive when you take out the 2008 one. I think it's within reach for Mitt Romney. Right now, though, I would say Obama has a slight advantage.
Yeah.
Tiny.
And New Hampshire?
That's a hard one. I think if I had to say one way or another, I say that's a Obama state.
Yeah. And then that shows, look at that. That shows it's Ohio, Ohio, Ohio instead of Florida, Florida, Florida.
It is.
Right. So whoever wins Ohio under the scenario that you just laid out wins the presidency. It could be as narrow as one electoral vote.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we haven't even talked about the split states, Maine and Nebraska.
Right, which we won't try and show here, but just because it's an interesting kind of inside the Beltway thing, give me 1 minute on what that is.
It's just a quirky situation where you have two states with an unusual electoral vote allocation, Nebraska and Maine. They distribute their electoral votes by congressional district. The Obama campaign was really smart in 2008, and they sort of went under the radar and picked off one of the electoral votes from Nebraska, which shocked everyone. It was sort of a brilliant bit of campaigning, and there's some talk this year. That's not going to happen in Nebraska this year, I don't think. There's some talk, sort of the
wishful thinking by the Republicans.
The most hopeful talk among Republicans is maybe they steal one of Maine's 2 votes out of Maine. Maine's going to go for Barack Obama. I don't think it happens, but that's out there and something that I think in their best case scenario that the Republican Party steals that from Obama.
All right, so it could be very close. If we had more time, we would do 2 more scenarios, one with a big Obama win, one with a big Romney win. We've done one here that's a pretty close one either way. A personal prediction on your part? Can I put you on the record on how all this is going to shake out?
Which part of it?
Well, is it going to be a close presidential election, or is it going to be a comfortable win for somebody? Will we know late that night, early the next morning who the president is, or will it be a more protracted discussion?
I think it's going to be pretty close. And I think it might end up being a protracted discussion because if you look back to the last really close presidential race we had in 2000, that year there were 5 states at 1% difference between the 2 candidates. 5 states. And so you could easily envision a scenario now, because 3 of them right now are under 1 percentage point. You could easily envision a scenario where provisional ballots drag it out in Ohio, or you've got a state that, many of the battleground states have a provision in state law that where an automatic recount kicks in if the margin between the 2 candidates is 0.5% or less. Some of those races could be that close. So, there are a lot of scenarios with a lot of potential for mischief out there.
All right. Charlie, thank you for coming back in. Less than a week away. We'll see how we do on these predictions. No matter who wins governing, which will be maybe another conversation that we can have, governing is going to be pretty difficult in the months ahead.
That'll be a fascinating time.
All right. Thanks for coming in. That's all we have for today. Thanks for watching.